Support for the United Kingdom to leave the ECHR is growing, which means the establishment are freaking out. An immigration lawyer, a pro-ECHR lawyer, went on a Jacob Rees-Mogg show on GB News, tried to challenge Rees-Mogg and failed. Alright, so we've had this debate in 2016 because Patrick Stewart and a couple of celebrities were used by the Remain campaign to do a video during the EU referendum pretending that if you leave the European Union or if you vote to leave, there's not going to be human rights in Britain. And they also basically implied that if you leave the EU, you will leave ECHR, which was the biggest misleading thing that the Remain campaign said. Well, one of the most crazy lies that they spread. But we now have left the EU. We're still part of ECHR. We're all only saying we should leave ECHR because we can do better. In fact, we helped the Europeans write most of it because it was our values that were spread around the Western side. So the people who are coming on TV, like this immigration lawyer on Jacob Rees-Mogg show, saying, if you leave ECHR, that means you're going to scrap human rights. And he basically tried to trap Jacob Rees-Mogg, saying, what parts of these human rights do you don't like? Is it the right to exist or free speech or right to work, all that nonsense? Jacob Rees-Mogg remained calm, collected, and decided to educate this idiot.
Your focus has been on where these rights come from, who's policing all this. But the focus should be on the rights themselves. And I'm confused as to what part of the convention you don't like, Jacob. I mean, do you not like the right to life or the right to free speech?
I like the right to life in a way that this court doesn't uphold. I believe the right to life starts at the point of conception through to natural death.
I'm confused. What part of the convention do you oppose?
Where the rights come from is of fundamental importance because it determines how they're applied. And the court, by the living document doctrine, has created a whole swathe of rights that Parliament never intended, indeed the government of the day never intended when signing up to the Convention. That's the problem. Whereas with parliamentary sovereignty, you know the structure of the rights and the constitutionality of the rights.
Now, I hear that argument. I've heard it time and time again. But the problem we have is that too much power will be given to the decision maker to decide itself. And so what the convention does, it protects unlawful interference by the state against its citizens. That's the purpose of the convention.
But actually Parliament's always been very good at that. I mean, if you think, during the First World War, Parliament was debating whether to have conscription because it thought it was such an intrusion in rights.
I mean, you saw the idiocy from that argument. So, one, he tried to basically trap Rees-Mogg, as I said. He was like, oh, so what parts of it do you not like? Is it the right to life or right to free speech? And Rees-Mogg very quickly said, well, it doesn't actually protect the right to life because it doesn't even actually believe. It doesn't even know the convention where life begins. So obviously referring to abortion rights. But on the issue of free speech, that's also nonsense. Essentially, what this immigration lawyer was talking about, and these people, so you need an entity, a body, to create rights and laws, right? So you have two options. You could either have an elected body, like Parliament, a Parliament to do it, or you could have an unelected body, so more dictatorial. And dictatorial as a word always sounds negative, but I'm using the true definition of the word. So you dictate. You know, you can't really be hired or fired by the electorate. So the European Commission or the ECHR, all these courts. So you could either have those unelected side or the elected side to do it. Then the immigration lawyer was saying, well, the problem with it, if you give too much power to politicians and Parliament, then they're going to basically come up with bad ideas. Yeah, but then that means that we could then replace them and replace the laws. If the unelected body entity, like the European Commission, like the ECHR, like an unelected court, decide to come up with a bad policy, you can't get rid of them. You can't amend it. That's the whole issue. You have to obey. You have to surrender your own rights and sovereignty because they will have to decide for you who died and made them the gods of morality. That's the issue. You need your own true conventional constitution. So we've already had it. We had our values beginning from the Magna Carta days, and actually before Magna Carta, you had the governed by consent in the Anglo-Saxon days. Then you had Magna Carta. Then you've obviously had the English Bill of Rights. Obviously, trying to talk about the British Bill of Rights recently, which didn't really go down too well. We have the common law. All this stuff created the fundamental foundation that actually then helped the Europeans write their own human rights laws. We don't need any help from unelected judges to help us remain civilized. In fact, look at the European countries. Look at what's happening in Sweden. Look at what's happening in France, on the streets in Germany. Are they civilized now? Or are we civilized? The problems are growing in the continent of Europe thanks to centralization of powers. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section. I'm Tousi, and we are the media.